I am Tobore Ovore, an investigative journalist. I am presently looking at COVID-19 levels of compliance and efforts to curb the spread of the virus. It appears that large funeral gatherings in Nigeria's hinterlands and rural areas are threatening to hinder efforts to curb the spread of the pandemic. Cameramen film funeral parades, and a band plays religious music at full volume. These long procession of cars convey occupants who are disobeying COVID-19 rules. As they follow the hearse conveying a departed soul, they are not wearing face masks, neither are they obeying social distancing protocols. This is how family members in towns, hinterlands, and rural parts such as Ugele, Emevo in Delta State, and other parts of Nigeria accompany the deceased to their native villages for burial. This happens despite the Nigerian government's directive that not more than 50 persons should physically attend funeral ceremonies because large funeral gatherings could lead to the transmission of COVID-19. Bearers sometimes carry the casket on their shoulders. At other times, the coffin stays in the hearse, with the first daughter of the deceased seated beside the casket. All the relatives of the deceased, however, get out of their cars when they reach the village, and a crowded session continues. All those attending the funeral wear new clothes made specially for the occasion. The females, especially those closely related to the deceased, do not wear face masks or shields to avoid smudging the makeup on their faces, because exorbitant fees were paid to makeup artists who spend hours working on their faces. Culture has been a stumbling block. And COVID-19 or not, custodians of cultural practices believe that the number of persons who turn up for the funeral is a major barometer to measure the status of the deceased.
Yes, indeed, it is true that the number of persons that turn up, at a funeral ceremony of the departed speaks a lot to, the kind of life the person lived, whether he lived well or not, and it equally expresses the way and manner the people that he left behind or she left behind appreciate him or her by way of befitting burial. A befitting burial, obviously, is not something that only the children will do. It's not something that only a few friends will do. Obviously, you will find family members. As a matter of fact, burial, among the Isokos and the Urobos, the family plays a key role, not just the children. So they must be there. The children will be there. In-laws are another set of persons that are very important. Now, before you now talk about friends and all of that, the burial goes beyond just those things that happen on the spot. There are rites that follow. At the end of all of that, other rites need to be observed. Until you observe those rites, then the burial process is not complete.
These funeral rites are a must if the person lived a long, worthy, and exemplary life. Hence the long walk and the many displays during the funeral rites activities.
But truly, when a person lives well, long enough, honorable enough, the tendency that people want to associate with the family. So you find friends of the children, be a crowd, and they will all dance around to show the kind of life the person lived. There are some death that we call, painful death. Such one, you will be able to do all those, ceremonies of celebration and all of that. But there are persons that will die, and rather than weep, you celebrate. So, yeah, it's like an evidence of what has just taken place. That yes, indeed, the person lived well. his children are living well, and all the person himself lived well, and all of that, the reflection is that crowd that you will see. I am saying that the only way you'll be able to enforce this COVID-19, the physical distancing and all the rest, is to put full, police presence in that place. But there are people who will still resist, no matter the number of police.
However, during the funeral ceremony, which often begins on Thursday and ends on Sunday, many anti-COVID-19 cultural practices are carried out. One can only assume that these large funeral gatherings in rural parts of Nigeria could be responsible for the current increase in the spread of the COVID-19 in several communities in Nigeria, particularly amongst persons who have never traveled out of their locations. The coronavirus not only calls attention to the quality of Nigeria's cultural belief system, values, and practices, but how they could hinder adherence to public health regulations. These cultural and social practices could cause life-threatening consequences for everyone, irrespective of class, age, education, and religion.
And in any case, the cultural root is something that is not just something you walk into in a day. It's something you grow in, transmitted from one generation to the other. And people have come to appreciate this, such that when it comes to burial, it will be difficult to use this pandemic to stop people from doing what they are used to do. There are families that are more than 50. There are people who have more than 50 children. So, would the rule say some children should not participate in the burial? You have this kind of situation. So, it's going to be difficult to actually stop culture from having its way. But then we must warn that COVID-19 is real. People have to be very careful. But it's not going to stop people from burying their dead. It's not going to stop it, because death is more highly celebrated than birth in our part of the world. Among the Sokos, among the Robos, people who will grace the burial ceremony cannot be compared with the number of a birthday or whatever ceremony. So yes, culture in a way, if you see from that background, that it is constituting a kind of obstacle to the control of COVID-19, it could be seen as such.
International standard practice states that people should avoid large gatherings and maintain a minimum of 3 feet distance from others in order to minimize the spread of the coronavirus. This is not the reality for at least the 99 million Nigerians who live in the hinterlands and rural parts of Nigeria. These Nigerians do not have access to the quality of COVID-19 publicity materials being disseminated in big cities such as Lagos.
I do know that there are agencies of government that are charged with responsibility of orientation and the rest. More should be done, and it should be done in local languages. If we are doing translations, do them in a way that everybody will be carried along. But if all that is being done is about these major languages that they have presented to be major, if that is all, then let those ones be saved. Leave the rest. But the ones you fail to save will come back and affect the ones you are trying to save. So we must be holistic in our approach.
Unfortunately, proper preventive measures such as wearing face masks, social distancing, limited gatherings, and healthy hand hygiene are not observed during the burial of a loved one. The Nigerian government should have provided various forms of publicity materials, specially tailored to the needs of various hinterlands and rural areas in Nigeria. It can still be done. This report was facilitated by the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, WSCIJ, under its COVID-19 Reality Check project.